My husband walked in while I was in another man's arms. On the couch we bought together, under the photo of our wedding day. And I watched the light leave his eyes like someone had turned off the sun. That was the moment I realized I had just destroyed the only person who ever truly loved me. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just looked at me like I was a stranger breaking into his home, and in that second, I became one. Daniel was the kind of man who didn't raise his voice unless he absolutely had to. He never once made me feel small, never belittled me, never forgot a birthday or anniversary. He was gentle with me in ways that made me feel safe. We met when I was 24. I was fresh out of a toxic relationship with a man who cheated, lied, and made me question every part of myself. Daniel was a breath of air in a world that had felt suffocating. He didn't try to win me over with grand gestures. He just showed up every day, with consistency and care. We got married 2 years after we met. It was a simple wedding, nothing extravagant, just a small garden ceremony with friends and family. But the vows he wrote still live in my chest like echoes. He said I was his home, that after years of feeling like the world was a place he had to survive, I made it somewhere he wanted to stay. I cried through the whole thing. We built a life in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland. Daniel worked in IT, but he never fit the cold, robotic stereotype. He loved tinkering with computers, but also spent hours reading bedtime stories to our kids in silly voices, planning backyard camping trips, making pancakes on Saturday mornings shaped like stars and dinosaurs. I stayed home for the first few years after our daughter Lily was born. Then came our son, Caleb. Our days were full and chaotic, but in the kind of way that made you fall into bed at night feeling grateful, not drained. Somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like a woman, and more like a role. Mom, wife, house manager, snack dispenser, errand runner. There were days I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I didn't resent Daniel, not at all. But I began to feel invisible. He still looked at me with those same warm eyes, still reached for my hand. Under the dinner table, still called me beautiful even when I hadn't washed my hair in 3 days. But I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything. It started innocently enough. A mom friend invited me to a community fitness class. "Get out of the house," she said. "You need something that's yours." I agreed, thinking it would be a nice way to sweat out the boredom, maybe make a few friends. That's where I met Lucas. He wasn't from our neighborhood, just filling in as a temporary instructor for a few weeks. He had this ease about him, this charisma that pulled people toward him. He remembered everyone's name by the second class, complimented small things that most people didn't notice. "You've got great posture," he said once, lightly tapping my shoulder. "Makes a difference." I blushed like a teenager. At first I rolled my eyes at the way the other women lingered after class, laughing at his jokes, finding reasons to keep him talking. But I started doing the same. I told myself it was harmless, that it was just nice to feel seen again. The messages started a couple weeks later. Just small things. A funny meme. A "Hey, you crushed it today." I told Daniel about it, at first. "The instructor's hilarious," I said casually. "Sends the funniest workout memes." He smiled and said, "Glad you're having fun." I didn't tell him when the messages got more personal. One night, after the kids were asleep and Daniel was out running errands, Lucas texted, "I bet your husband doesn't appreciate how strong you are. You're stunning, Rachel." I stared at the screen for a long time. I should have deleted it, blocked him. But instead I replied, "He does. But thank you." The next time we saw each other, there was a charged silence between us. We didn't touch, not then. But the air was thick with something unspoken, something I pretended I didn't want. The kiss came 2 weeks later. After class, I lingered. He offered to walk me to my car. It had started raining. My hoodie was soaked through by the time we reached it. I turned to say goodbye, but he just looked at me, eyes full of heat and restraint. "Tell me to stop," he said. I didn't. It was the kind of kiss that knocks your brain sideways, the kind that pulls you out of your life and drops you into a fantasy. I should have felt guilt, shame, but in that moment, all I felt was alive. I told myself it would stop there, that it was just a kiss, a stupid mistake, that I loved my husband and my children and would never go further. But once you've crossed that line, it's not a line anymore. It's a slope. The affair started slowly. Excuses to see him, to text, to meet up under the guise of errands or classes. I crafted stories with surgical precision. Lily's teacher wants volunteers. I'm grabbing groceries. Book club is running late. Daniel never questioned me. Not once. He trusted me so completely it made the lies feel crueler. And yet I told them. Lucas was reckless in ways Daniel never was. He made me feel wanted, consumed. He said things Daniel would never say. Sometimes, I craved the danger more than the man himself. The thrill of being desired. The thrill of doing something I shouldn't. I started dressing differently. Losing weight. Smiling for no reason. Friends noticed. You're glowing, one said. What's your secret? I just laughed. Daniel noticed too. You seem happier lately, he said one night while rubbing my feet on the couch. I'm glad. I've missed that smile. I almost confessed right then. I felt sick with guilt, but I kissed his forehead and whispered, I love you, and buried my face in a blanket so he wouldn't see my tears. The close calls started stacking. Once, Lucas texted while Daniel and I were having dinner. I told him it was a friend from the gym. Another time, Lily walked into the room while I was deleting a photo Lucas had sent. She didn't say anything, but her eyes lingered too long. I changed my passcode that night. Then came the night everything unraveled. Daniel had taken the kids to visit his parents for the weekend. I pretended to have a migraine. He left with kisses and soup and a blanket tucked around my legs. Lucas came over less than 2 hours later. It was the first time he'd been in my home. We didn't make it to the bedroom. We barely made it to the couch. It was frantic and messy, and I remember knocking over a framed photo of our wedding as we tore at each other's clothes. I didn't even stop to pick it up. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that Daniel had forgotten Lily's stuffed giraffe. She couldn't sleep without it. He came back quietly, not wanting to wake me. He used his key, walked in through the garage, and saw everything. His wife, tangled in another man's arms. He didn't shout, didn't throw anything. He just stood there, staring. I saw him out of the corner of my eye and froze. Lucas scrambled to cover himself, but Daniel didn't even look at him. He looked at me. Just me. It was the kind of look that breaks you. Not anger, not hatred, just devastation. His whole world had just shattered, and I was the one holding the hammer. It was like a trance. I barely remember what came after. I reached for him, sobbing, pleading. He stepped back like I was poison. Without a word, he turned around and walked out the door. Lucas left minutes later. I actually haven't seen him since. Daniel didn't answer my calls, didn't respond to texts. The next morning, I found a suitcase on the porch. He'd packed some of my things. There was a note tucked inside. You made me believe I was safe, that you were my home. I don't even know who you are anymore. I collapsed on the floor, screaming into the silence. The days that followed were a blur of begging and denial. I tried to explain, said it was a mistake, said I still loved him. But he wouldn't see me. He wouldn't let me near the kids. Eventually, he filed for separation, cited infidelity. The custody arrangement was brutal. I saw my kids 2 weekends a month and every other Wednesday. Lily wouldn't look me in the eye for weeks. Caleb kept asking why I didn't live at home anymore. People found out. Friends stopped calling. My family was heartbroken. My mother said, "I don't even know how to defend you." My sister didn't speak to me for months. Daniel never badmouthed me to the kids, never poisoned them against me. But I could feel the difference in how they saw me. Like I'd gone from center of their world to someone they had to be careful around. Years have passed. I live in a small apartment now, work part-time at a florist shop. I've tried dating, but nothing sticks. I can't seem to let anyone near the wreckage I became. Some nights, I still wake up reaching for a man who isn't there. Daniel moved on. I've heard he's dating someone now. I hate the thought of him with someone else. It burns. Not because I want to ruin it, but because I know I could have had that forever. And I gave it up for a man who didn't even stay to pick up the pieces. I destroyed a good man. I wrecked a family that was whole and loving and mine. And for what? A handful of stolen moments and compliments I was too weak to walk away from. If I could go back, I would have deleted that first message. I would have kissed my husband a little longer when he walked in the door. I would have looked at him the way he always looked at me. But you can't undo the moment you open the wrong door, and I opened it wide.